Because we only have 10 minutes, I will be very brief, but it's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I look forward to the conversation and discussion, and I hope we can get more in detail regarding what all of this means during the coffee break. All right, start. So, yes, as was just very kindly presented, we just heard that European cinema should circulate, perhaps more widely, and this will require initiatives, namely from the European Commission, but not only, EU at the EU level, at the member state level. But if we want those initiatives, right, to help support the distribution, the circulation, the visibility of European film around the world to be sustainable, they have to respond to the needs, the wishes of film professionals, also film audiences, but film professionals as well, within other film markets and ecologies. And however, until now, we did not have data, structured data, looking at the preferences of film professionals. So this is what we try to identify and summarize with REBOOT. This is what I'm going to present is collaborative work. So I worked on it with Ana Newton from Erasmus University, Luis Albornoz, Isabela Vargas Miranda, Maria Trinidad Garcia Leiva from UC3M in Spain, Marina Rosato Fernandes, António Vlasis from Liège, and then Ruken, Dogu Erdede, Melis Belil, and Elif Ali, I'm sorry for butchering your names, from Turkey. And this really is collaborative work. The link will be on the final slide, so don't worry if this is too fast right now. And I want to say that it's collaborative work, also because I want to acknowledge Ana Newton worked on the graphs in particular, and also Isabella, who did a substantial amount of work, and also Antonius, who had the idea. So this really is collaborative work. We have many questions. The report is 250 pages long, so there are several questions, but some of them were, namely, how do non-European film professionals, what do they understand by the European film industry? What words come to mind? What are the strengths from their perspective of the European film industry? Where does European film tend to circulate? What are the main obstacles to that circulation? What are the main needs as well of the film ecosystems of 6 markets? Are the programs developed by the EU in terms of film policy relevant? Yes, no. And how do EU film initiatives and support and collaborations with European partners compare with collaborations, for example, with American or Chinese or Russian, or in other cases, Indian, Saudi partners? As you'll imagine, I don't have time to summarize all of this, but I do want to say that, of course, these questions address several knowledge needs, namely the need to decenter EU film policy, right? If we're thinking of EU global film policy, then centering that development on knowledge focused only on the EU is, to say the least, partial. To provide evidence-based recommendations to support this policy, to develop recommendations recognizing film festivals and markets and their roles, which requires understanding the roles that they play, and of course, to think about Europeanness and its relation to cinema. As was mentioned, the report is based on a mixed methods approach, a survey with around 425 valid responses. I will only present findings from the main sample, but we also have 6 samples, and so we have a lot of data focused on Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, South Africa, South Korea / East Asia, and Turkey. And we also have, because there are so many Turkish respondents, which is great, we wanted to ensure that the Turkish responses did not skew the main sample, so we also have a selected, so main sample minus Turkish respondents, hence the 250 pages. Just want to say that we also ran an intersectional approach to see to what extent gender or age influenced the results, and we did not find significant influence. We also ran several interviews, 99 interviews across different categories, mostly directors and producers, but also other categories of film professionals. Findings. When asked, again, I have to say this is the general sample, so you can find these analysis split across those six selected ecologies or markets as well. But the European film industry is perceived as not really uncompetitive. I mean, only 4% of people mention uncompetitive, or slow. 12% only of film professionals outside of the EU mention it, defined it as such. In fact, most non-EU film professionals see it as associated with international co-productions, cinéma d'auteur, art cinema, and state support. And when asked what the main strength of the European film industry is, they also tend again to highlight international co-productions, film festivals in Europe and beyond, and public support, and then art house, cinema, cultural diversity. In some cases, for example, in Turkey, the idea of artistic freedom comes up, which of course reflects the context. What are the outlets of circulation of European films? This is quite interesting, isn't it? Because sometimes we hear that art house cinemas are not very productive or a wise investment. Well, when we ask non-EU film professionals, where do you tend to see European films? What is your way to engage with them? Where do audiences in your country get to see these films? In art house cinemas or in the non-commercial circuit, film festivals. Quite a few also mention movie. Again, this depends on the country. And then streaming services. I mean, of course, that the answers then are well distributed, but the focus on film festivals and art house cinemas here is central. So again, it goes against what we sometimes hear. What are the main obstacles to European film distribution? We see again a distributed sample. However, competition from Hollywood films was selected by most than 50% of non-EU film professionals as the first choice. So, and this is relevant, and I'll mention it later. It's relevant for many reasons, but namely for something that I want to stress later. Of course, as well, limited marketing budgets, lack of awareness, cultural differences, but they just do not compare. Okay, so we understand how the European film industry is perceived, where it circulates, the main obstacles to its circulation. What about the other side? What are the main needs of the local film ecosystems in which these non-EU film professionals work? And again, these answers are relatively well distributed, but increased funding access is a key response, again, but almost 50% of respondents selected it as the first choice. And then we also see improved exhibitor sector, improved distribution sector. We also see access to international film circuit, but funding access being the key need of perceived by non-EU film professionals. How do they compare EU programs against those of non-EU partners? So it's rather positive. I mean, maybe I'm an optimistic person, but when we ask them how effective are existing EU film initiatives, EU funding, to help you go develop your own film projects, most tend to say that they are either somewhat effective or very effective, but it's more or less split. So I think we should pay attention to that. Also, when they're asked, how do experiences with EU partners compare with those of, say, Chinese, Indian, again, in South Africa, the Saudis emerged a lot. They say that European collaborations tend to be better or slightly better, but again, similar, says 51%. I'm not sure if I can be that optimistic about this for us to discuss later on. So in the future, if the EU wants to develop initiatives that are really highly relevant, right, to be even more positive in this assessment, what are the areas that the EU should prioritize? Look, first choice, again, almost 40%, development of co-production initiatives. And then we see access to international markets, tax incentives, encouragement of international collaborations. So, what we're hearing here, and this is I'm going to move to the implications part of the presentation, is that when we connect what we're hearing from non-EU film professionals with what we will hear coming from EU film professionals, there's a clear match between what they need and what we will hear that EU film professionals also say. So co-productions emerge from non-EU film professionals as something that is central, collaboration as something that is central, access to film festivals as something that is central. And this we'll see is something that joins the needs of European film professionals as well. So policy recommendations, we have many, which I will not mention, around co-productions, for example, to update them, to consolidate them, to lower thresholds of co-production financing requirements, so that, for example, countries in the Global South can be equal partners, to reinforce and widen film festivals, to support exhibition and distribution by developing partnerships, the idea of equality of mutuality, of being seen as an equal partner, came up repeatedly in interviews. So non-EU film professionals don't want simply to be part of a co-production. They want to be equal partners and not only servicing agents. And to review, simplify support schemes regarding the distribution and promotion of European films, and to highlight, again, to include non-Europeans across the whole process of the development, but also particularly the evaluation of these programs. This is the key, I would say, failure, if I can add a comment based on the South African case, which I know well. This is what the Chinese, the Russians, Brazilians, the Saudi are giving South African film professionals, is the idea to collaborate on an equal level, which is what the EU is still not doing. But there's space to do more. So thank you very much. Thank you. Wow.